Hi guys, it's Mrs. Millicent. Okay, let's do the check your understanding on page 349. Okay. All right, oh look, a two-way table. Okay, Yellowstone National Park staff surveyed a random sample of 1,526 winter visitors to the park. They asked each person whether they belonged to an environmental club, like the Sierra Club. So they responded no or yes. Respondents were also asked whether they owned, rented, or had never used a snowmobile. Okay, the two-way table summarizes the survey responses. Okay, we've seen two-way tables before in chapter 1, and my advice to you was whenever you see a two-way table, total everything. Okay, I'm not going to write in the book, so I rewrote the table. Okay, so let's do our totals. Throw these in the calculator. You can confirm everything in your calculator, but I got my totals like this. So 657 never used a snowmobile, 574 rented them, and 295 owned snowmobiles. Let's see, 1,221 people were not in the environmental club, and 305 were. What's nice was we were told the total was 1526, so I can double check and add my row totals and my column totals and make sure they both add up to be 1526. You guys can check all that in the calculator. Okay. Now we're going to have to do some probabilities. Look at it. Suppose we choose one of the survey respondents at random. What's the probability that the person is an environmental club member? Okay. So what's the probability that somebody is an environmental club member? Now guys, this is the same thing as chapter 1. This is a marginal distribution, okay? It's talking about one variable, environmental club member. It's either gonna be no or yes. So the fact that they wanna know the probability that they are an environmental club member is just gonna be the total yes over the table total, okay? Oop, 305 over 1526. Stick that in your calculator. Get me at least 3 decimals. Now this one was like 0.19986, okay? So I'm gonna go a couple more decimals. I don't wanna go too short, okay? So there's about a 19-20% chance that a randomly selected person will be an environmental club member, okay? So remember, this is a marginal distribution. It's the exact same thing we did in chapter 1, okay? Now number 2 says, we've got some notation here, find the probability that a randomly chosen person was not a snowmobile renter. Okay, well, not a snowmobile renter. So when I hear the word not, I think of a complement. So I think of 1 minus the probability of a snowmobile renter. Okay, so my snowmobile renter, okay, again, that's just one variable. So that's a marginal distribution. So 574 over 1526, okay? So if I take the complement of my snowmobile renters, I should be left with the not, okay? Throw that in the calculator and I get 0.624. Now you could have also, going from the table, if you don't think in terms of complement, this is the probability of being a snowmobile renter. These two are not snowmobile renters, so I could have certainly added those up. So I could have also gone 657 plus 295 over 1526. And the funny thing is you get the exact same answer, okay? So, oops, I don't care which way you do it, just do it. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the table. Okay, number 3, what's the probability that a randomly selected person is an environmental club member and not a snowmobile renter? Okay, so again, in chapter 1, we talked about ands, which are joint probabilities. So I need to find the intersection of environmental club member, so that's the yeses, and not a renter, okay? Well, that's these two, right? That's the 212 and the 16. So if they're not a renter, they're never been on it or they own it, okay? So I'm gonna add those up. I'm gonna take my 212 plus 16 and put it over my table total. So throw that in the calculator and I get 0.149, okay? So again, this was a joint distribution, just like in chapter 1. This was a marginal, just like in chapter 1. And this was sort of like a marginal. We had to combine a couple marginals, right? We had to add up 2 marginals or do a complement of a marginal. I'll put marginal. okay? So again, we've seen this before, and I told you all those marginal relative frequencies and joint relative frequencies or distributions would become probability. So here they are becoming probability. So there's about a 15% chance a randomly selected person is going to be an environmental club member and not a renter, okay? All right, last one. Oh. Find the probability that the person is not an environmental club member or is a snowmobile renter. All right, so I had to write this one out. Not an environmental club member or a snowmobile renter. Okay, so we didn't really talk about ors, I don't think, but let's look at the table. In chapter 1. Not an environmental club member, so that's all these guys. Or a snowmobile renter, so that's my snowmobile renter. So it's all these numbers, okay? So I can do this one of two ways. I can just add all these up, right? So 4, 4, 5, because these are all my not club members. And then my snowmobile or a snowmobile renter, well, I've already got 497 in there, so I'm just going to add 77. Okay, so I'm going to put this over my table total. And I get 0.851, okay? Or I can think more formally, let me fold this for a sec. I can think more formally about a formula that you've learned for or. So the probability of A or B, an event, is the probability of A plus the probability of B minus the probability of A and B, which is a joint. So the probability of being an not environmental club member is 1221, okay? Probability of being a snowmobile renter is 574, minus the probability of being not in the club and renting a snowmobile, okay? So the reason I have to subtract this, because if I think about it, in my 1221 and my 557, that was counted twice, okay? So there's my and, where I add them up, there's my or where I add them up, and I'm subtracting the joint or the overlap, okay? I'm subtracting the and. And the funny thing is, you get the same thing. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you do it. Show work, though. You got to show me some numbers, okay? So there's our probability that a randomly selected person is not an environmental club member or a snowmobile renter. Okay? Again, I hope this was helpful, and all this should look a little familiar from chapter 1. Okay, see you next time.